I'm Dennis Cooper, host of the podcast Culpable, from Resonate Originals and Tenderfoot TV. In 2019, I took a long-form investigative approach covering the case of Christian Andriacchio. In 2022, I did a deep dive into another case, the case of Brittany Stykes. But now we're changing things up a little, with a new spin on the series. In Culpable Case Review, I'll be highlighting 6 different cases over the next 6 weeks to help give more victims and their families a voice in their fight for justice.
I called Andrew and he answered. He didn't sound like himself, which was weird.
He sounded kind of angry.
At first I thought he'd just woken up. He sounded agitated, like he was pissed off about something. It was very short, probably less than a minute call. And that was the last time that I talked to Andrew. I did tell him I loved him, but he did sound like there was something off.
A new podcast from Tenderfoot TV. When Alana Chen disappeared, her family was left searching for answers. What they found was 10 years of her journals, filled with secrets that were tearing her apart.
He forgave my unspeakable sin. He took my defilement and buried it.
In a controversy that's divided her community.
Her daughter first opened up to a priest when she was just 14 years old. However, the church denies any conversion therapy was done.
Dear Alana is an unraveling mystery about teenage rebellion and spiritual manipulation, the price we pay to belong, and the systems that pay no price at all. Listen for free on Apple Podcasts. To binge the entire season of Dear Alana, ad-free, subscribe to Tenderfoot Plus on Apple Podcasts or at tenderfootplus.com.
All right, who do we got here? We got Payne.
Is this Payne Lindsey?
No, it's not.
The famous Payne Lindsey?
It's not, actually. It's his doppelganger.
What do you do on the show?
Nothing. I just, I'll let you guys do all the work and I just take the credit for it. Preferred method. The Hollywood way.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome to the bonus.
The show within the show.
Yeah. The Roundtable, except for it's square.
It is, rectangle, but yeah.
Yeah, true.
They can see it.
Yeah, I was bad at
You can't.
geometry, right? Is that geometry? It is.
I think it's geology.
Bad at all math. So
Okay. Yeah, Dylan doesn't know for
I don't
sure.
know math.
One thing Dylan's definitely bad at in terms of math is adding up helium particles,
Yeah.
right?
Turns out there's a lot of them.
Turns out you need 10x what you thought you needed.
We start to fill it up.
Is it going in there?
It's filling. It's looking great. I'm getting really excited.
Very good.
My confidence up 90%, 95%. This is totally going to work.
All right, really quick.
Then all of a sudden, the helium tank just fizzles out.
Didn't you think like the whole time that you were driving that the car was going to blow up because of these big ass helium tanks?
Just driving through the mountains in Arizona with a big ass helium tank in the back, just bouncing around. I cracked the windows though, so
I like how the guy
just in case.
the guy was like, "You don't know anything about this, and I'm not gonna help you strap this down or anything. You just we'll just throw it in there, let it roll around."
He's like, "You're an American. You want to buy some helium? You got it."
He's like, "You've never done this before, right?" And you're like, "Yeah, correct." And he's like, "Cool, I'm gonna give him some empty fucking canisters of helium then, and we're closed on Sundays, so fuck off."
I'm convinced that would happen.
Yeah. So what are we doing today? What are we talking about?
Well, I guess we should. We kind of need to figure that out. We need to figure out what this show is going to be about, and when better time to figure it out than right now.
That's true.
I think we should do it on UFOs.
Oh, like
that's
aliens.
a good start. I think. Yeah. What if we talked about UFOs?
Yeah.
What do you know about UFOs?
As an after show of the UFO podcast.
Just a coincidence,
that
though. Just
is
coincidence.
smart.
I dig that. You ever seen an alien?
No, I wish. Have you seen an alien?
Maybe I am an alien. Maybe we're all aliens.
Payne is an alien.
See, I've never said that I wasn't an alien. Didn't say that I was either. But I didn't say I wasn't.
Maybe we'll find out.
Also, what if I was an alien and I just didn't know it? What if we were all aliens and we didn't know it?
That's what I'm saying. It's probably the case.
Bring the weed out. Let's talk about this.
Get baked.
Maybe we talk about. I feel like if you listen to this podcast, then, episode 1 through 8, we go through different stories with interviews and accounts from people that we all met and talked to in real life. Maybe we just expand on some of those stories and talk about, I don't know, maybe even some of the theories we had that didn't make it into the story, or a little side note that might be kind of interesting,
Yeah.
Something like
awesome.
that.
Yeah. I'll start. I think his helium tank was leaking.
Yeah, let's start with episode. Was that episode 5?
Episode 6 or something?
Yeah, 6. The funny part about that is you were, it was not for the show. You were very, very disappointed in yourself. You were upset.
Those were the worst days of my life.
I thought it was hilarious. And I did feel bad for you. I didn't laugh in your face, but I was like, this is so fucking funny.
You bought me a drink at the bar later.
I did.
It helped a lot, I'll say.
And you just thought this was over. You had failed. And you did fail on the little part of it, but I was like, no, this was an experiment. I think that we still use this. It's actually interesting to me that we put all this time, money, and effort into trying to create a hoax, and we did fail. Now, I think on a round 2, we would undoubtedly put something in the sky that looks like a UFO.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it took it was a trial and error. We're in the right spot with the right materials, and all kind of weird shit went into it. And we couldn't get the fucker off the ground.
Yeah. Came close.
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, actually, that is the story that we're putting in there. Because I think it actually speaks to, like you were saying, it's, when you see something weird in the sky, odds are it is either some sort of optical illusion, or somebody, went through a lot of effort to put it up there to look like that. Or maybe it's actually something, some sort of anomaly, some sort of unknown craft. I think, despite our, failed efforts at getting a UFO in the sky, I think we learned the lesson of, hey, maybe some of those things you're seeing in the sky are actually weird.
Totally. That was my big takeaway. It's like, as sad as it was to not get it off the ground, at the end of the day, in hindsight, I'm kind of glad we didn't, because it taught that better lesson, which is like, there is this huge level of effort that goes into making these things and making them really work. And we couldn't do it. We tried. I tried my damnedest. I really did. Couldn't do it. And for me, that adds some level of credence to a lot of these claims of things that float around. You see them all the time. And I think it takes away a little bit of people's ability to be able to say, like, no, that's man-made. Because it's hard. It's really hard to do.
Yeah, and there's really 2 camps that I've seen on the internet where it's like, you either believe, obviously there's gray area, but you believe in everything that you see, every video, no matter how shitty, is a UFO, or you don't believe and every video, no matter how convincing, is not a UFO and it can't be a UFO.
I think I don't think anyone should blindly believe anything. I think that is problematic, especially if you're trying to solve something. If you're trying to figure something out, you cannot just believe whatever is the most comfortable for you to believe. That's not a very scientific approach to something that has a lot of questions still. So I think that, for High Strange, I tried to stay as objective as possible and kind of test, like bringing in someone like Mick West, who is known on the internet as being someone who is a major debunker of claims. And from what I can tell, most of the time he's right. There's a lot of things on the internet that look like something and it turns out to be nothing. So you can't just blindly believe everything you see, but there are some stories that are harder to debunk and have never been debunked. And that was kind of my focus on, when it came to picking the stories and the cases to cover in the series. I wanted to focus on those the most because those are the ones that still have a lot of questions to them. And maybe if we just attempt to find some answers to those, we'll learn more about it in that process. So let's just start with episode 1, right? Which was kind of an introduction to the series, but we touched on Roswell for a second. And to be honest, I always thought Roswell was totally just some bullshit. Because that's the one you hear all the time, Roswell, New Mexico, and for years, people have thought that a spaceship crashed there, but they've never been able to prove it. So I was like, this is just one of those urban legends at this point. But as I went through all the information, I realized that undoubtedly something had to have happened because of the response that was there. There's no way that this flimsy, tiny weather balloon that looks like, tinfoil, fell in the middle of the desert and caused all this uproar. That wouldn't make any sense. No one would even know about it. Something had to have happened to spark the attention. Now, maybe it went, the game of telephone went too far over the years and it wasn't as crazy as we thought, but there's no way that it was just this flimsy, tinfoil-looking weather balloon, and then that's it. If it was that clear-cut, I wouldn't be talking about it right now. And so to me, that was interesting. Just going back, you'd have to say that all these people are lying. So many people. And I bet some of them are lying, but power in numbers, you get enough people saying something, it makes you at least want to listen and dissect it some more and consider it as an option. What was your take on the Roswell incident?
I was kind of the same way. I guess I leaned towards not believing it. I didn't think it was complete bullshit like growing up, but I was like, there's a big chance that never happened and that was not real or anything like that. But yeah, like you said, which happened with a lot of the stories, researching these stories for this show, there was so many times where I was like, wow, the further I dive into this, the more I believe it. The more like circumstantial evidence adds up that I'm like, wow, hold on. There's affidavits of people who were there. There's a rancher that saw part of the crash. Then there's another person like, I think a mile or two away that had some in his yard or whatever. And it's just, the more you read about it, you're like, well, wait a minute. The Army put out a broadcast saying that they recovered a flying disc. And it's like, why would they do that? Is that misinformation? And then that goes too far into conspiracy world where it's like, that's a crazier conspiracy to me than the Roswell crash and it being...
I feel like, the original broadcast that they recovered a flying disc, either that was just a mistake in terms of how they described it, just an innocent, like, why'd you say disc? And then it became some huge thing after that, or it was the truth. I don't think I think it was nothing deeper than that. But you'd want to think if the military is putting out a statement, to concerned citizens of New Mexico and beyond of this crash that happened in the desert, that they would get the wording right. Because a disc is extremely different than a tinfoil flimsy balloon, right? So I don't know. But you also make the argument that, somebody flubbed and just used a word that maybe they shouldn't have, not thinking it would cause some crazy conspiracy theories for decades after that. And it's just as simple as that. But then you'd also have to add in that all these people would follow suit and create this narrative that's all bullshit, but somehow connects to itself. This is back in... When was it? Was it
1947?
60s? I've got some dates for you. So this happened July of 1947, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Roswell
47. Yeah.
Okay. And then Air Force was created in September of 47.
That's juicy.
Seems strange to me that it was all like Army, I think, originally, and then they're like, let's make a specialized branch. I'm sure they had a type of Air Force that was like the Army Air Force or whatever, like how they have the Navy Air Force or whatever the. Air Force, Navy, I don't know, I'm not good with the military, but creating a specialized branch for the Air Force the same year as Roswell seems strange to me. Like, I don't know, and wasn't the guy at Area 51, he just kept talking about 1947 and how, like, special that date was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also it's 1947. It's like, today in 2023, if somebody's creating a hoax or going around, spreading some lie that they experienced something extraterrestrial or paranormal, they're usually attention-seeking people, right? They're people who are trying to get your attention, and there's so many ways to do that now. You can write a tweet, you can go on Instagram Live, you can go on a talk show, you can, write a book, all kind of shit. back then, if you're living in some small town of Roswell, New Mexico, which I've been there, it's still small. It had to have been even smaller back then.
Way smaller.
You're like yelling into a void that something crazy happened. I just don't see, if you were doing that to get attention, I just don't see how they would even have got that attention back then. It would have just been very unsatisfying for someone who, would be making it up for their own gratification.
Yeah, to what end? I mean,
To
why
what
would they do
end,
this?
right?
Like at the time, to set the stage in the 1940s, late 1940s, we enter World War II, and like the peak of it is like 1945, 1946. So you're seeing the beginning of the Second Great War. The whole world has changed by this, but the first time, at least in American pop culture, that you start to hear these accounts of these flying discs, this term flying disc came from just a random pilot in America who was flying over some mountains somewhere in, the Midwest, and, made a report that he saw like a fleet of flying saucer-shaped, like plate-shaped discs that were just flying around, like in a V shape, which is a weird thing for a pilot to say, especially at that time. It's really bizarre. But then you can see how something like that, which might blow up in popular culture in 1945, when, granted, there's not a lot of really interesting things happening in 1945, at least media-wise, You
mean it wasn't cool in 1945?
You wouldn't think so,
Actually, probably cooler, because there's less bullshit to deal with on the internet.
True,
It didn't exist.
There was no internet. Yeah. But I mean, you can imagine, how pop culture would take this idea of something like a flying disc and then just kind of run rampant with it. And you could see how that could spread over a year or two to where in 1947, all of a sudden, the military, somebody in the military, some media rep in the military says, maybe we finally solved this enigma of these flying discs that have been in our airspace. During World War II, they were called Foo Fighters, and pilots all over the world saw these things, and they called them the flying disc Foo Fighters at the time, well before UFO was a term. So you can imagine that the Army might get a hold of something like this and say, we've recovered one of these flying discs, maybe we can now get to the very bottom of it.
Oh, shit.
Bum, bum, bum.
No.
All I did was just touch this remote. I touched it.
It's haunted.
I
It's got
breathed
so
on
angry in here.
it. I don't know which one. Oh, whoa. All right. Whoa.
Moving around, getting all excited talking about aliens.
Here's the thing. You have an excellent point on Roswell. I think undoubtedly that all these reports of flying discs happening in the 40s and in that time frame have over time influenced the Hollywood trope image of a UFO flying saucer, and definitely influenced people's accounts of seeing stuff that is odd in the sky. But I also think that it simultaneously exists with a real phenomena. They can both be true. That's the thing. I think that all these stories have influenced what people claim to see. And I would say for probably even a majority of weird sightings, they're probably something super normal. But I think there are some that are not easily explained away that could likely be extraterrestrials or some other intelligence beyond Earth. And it's not that black and white. It's easier to look at this topic of UFOs and aliens in a very black and white sense. But I don't think it's that simple. It can all be true as well. It could be true that a lot of them are fake, and it could be true that some of them are real. And if you're someone who doesn't want to believe, you're going to focus on the ones that are easily debunked. If you're someone who wants to believe, you're going to focus on the other ones. But it's like, how do we meet in the middle and recognize that they both can coexist, and that there likely is something else that we haven't been able to scientifically explain yet that will probably be explained at some point in human history.
I hope so. I really hope so.
I didn't say our lifetime. I just said
I know.
human history, which I hope that's, that we're a part of that one. But shit, it could be a long time. I have no idea.
Could be. It could be tomorrow.
No.
That's what they say on Twitter. coming soon.
Disclosure.
You just wait. I actually know everything. I'm just parsing it out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, some insiders reached out to you recently, right?
They did, yeah.
Oh,
The
spill
Men
the
in Black
secrets.
visited my house. They were super cool. We had cocktails, smoked cigars, and we just kind of shot the shit, right? And they told me everything. But they said, hey, look, don't tell them all at once. String them along a little bit, right? Tell them every day that something big is coming next. And say that until you die.
Yeah.
And then right
hook 'em.
before you die, say some shit and then make up the rest. And then just confuse everybody.
Then everybody will say it was a deathbed confession, so it must be the truth.
It has to be the truth.
You know?
Those always confuse me though. The deathbed confession, like is that your like last two raw to be like, before I take my last breath, I'm gonna fuck with y'all so hard. I'm gonna say some crazy shit.
It's not a bad way to go.
I saw aliens at Roswell. You're like, okay, what the hell, dude? Like, he's not even alive to get a kick out of that.
I was always like, when I'm old, when I'm 90 years old in hospice or whatever, if I make it there, I'm going to do heroin. That was always my thing, which I don't know why.
What?
It's like, well, what's going to happen? You're going to die? Who cares?
Right. That's
You know,
true.
Go out with a
you
bang.
lived a life.
That's true. Yeah.
I want to try it. A
Yeah,
lot of
if you're like 90 years old or above and you're on your deathbed, every drug should be legal. The doctors should go in there with this briefcase, like out of Pulp Fiction, and be like, what you want. Any of it.
All of it, maybe.
And they'll say, hey, this one might kill you. And they're like, that's all good. If you don't want to die yet, then maybe they shouldn't do that. But you should be able to sign a waiver that says, yeah, like I want to try LSD or, whatever.
I want to do LSD and heroin if I'm on my deathbed. Same
the same time?
Same time.
You might solve all the world's problems, but then you die, so you wouldn't really matter.
It'd be a fun last 10 minutes if I make it that long.
So let's jump from episode 1 to episode 2. Travis Walton is the entire episode, pretty much. How long has it been now?
45 years. 45 years and 3 months. But some things don't change,
What you mean?
Some things about it haven't gotten any easier at all. I wish that this had never happened. It's not been a good thing for my life, for my family. In some ways, they don't even see the real me,
What are y'all's thoughts on Travis Walton?
I'd like to ask you guys, because you guys were both there for the interview and I wasn't there. So,
Okay.
just from your perspective, I mean, you guys met him, like you talked to him for hours. Like, what were your thoughts about him, like when you met him?
I mean, it seemed like he was completely lying and not. No, I'm kidding. No, I 100% believed him. Like that was one of the ones definitely when we were doing the research for the show, and Payne was like, "Hey, I'm thinking this case, this case, this case." I was like, I don't know about abduction stuff. I was most on the fence about, not even on the fence. I was on the other side of the fence. I was like, nah, I don't know about abductions. I don't think they're real. I don't see how anyone can believe these. After sitting there and talking to recording him, I 100% believed him. Like, there's no way, or he's the biggest scam artist I've ever read about, researched anything with. He's like world record holder scammer, if that's
Right.
true.
What was it that really like won your mind over? What convinced you that he was telling the truth?
Honestly, just the way he was talking, the way he was so sincere, the way he was apprehensive about even coming to us, like he wasn't like excited to talk to us. I don't think if he had the choice, if he was not as nice of a person, I don't think he would have done it.
He definitely didn't want to talk to us.
No.
Fact.
It seemed like he was reliving trauma, 100%, and it seemed like he didn't want to talk about it. And it just seemed like it wasn't comfortable for him, like all of it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when I read the story on the internet first, I was like, this is so batshit crazy that I want to talk to the person who's claiming this happened to them. Mm-hmm. Like, I felt like no matter what, that's going to be interesting. If someone's making this totally bizarre, wild claim, all these years later too, like, what's he going to say about it now, right? And so that was just my general interest at first, but I guess I was kind of taken aback by how serious he was about it. Like, to me, the way that he told the story to us, the way he was emotionally when he was telling it, those were all signs of something that I've seen before in someone who's had, reliving something that was traumatic that happened to them. So even if he did make it all up, it's like he's somehow reliving this story today, telling us like it's a memory. And, it's one of those stories where it's so out there, it's almost just easy to dismiss on the surface, but there's so many different parts to it. And I've seen people online who, are like, he's lying, blah, 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 blah. And like, somebody said, I don't know where it was, that, he's been proven to have lied. They actually made all this up because they were about to lose their logging contract. I'm like, that's not fucking true. It isn't. I've researched this case pretty hard. That isn't true. And that's not a good enough reason to, for 40 plus years, keep up some crazy lie. They don't even work out there anymore. They don't even do that anymore.
How much were they even? I feel like they weren't even making that much money. It wasn't like a...
There's no way a logger in 1975 in Snowflake, Arizona is making shit tons of money. I mean, I don't have the statistics, but I wouldn't even need to look. It's like, if I'm dead wrong, then that would be interesting. But that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way. And also just all of them lying to the police when it got serious. That's like something I found out after the Travis Walton interview. That was like, okay, well, this backs it even more. Like, why would they do that? Why would they all lie about this?
5 different accounts or 6 accounts?
Yeah, 5 or 6.
7 total if you're counting Travis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I've landed on this as a theory. I'll never know for certain if Travis is telling the truth about what he experienced because I wasn't there. There's nothing he can tell me to really prove it entirely, and there's nothing I can do to really disprove it at this point. But I think that if Travis is making it up, he's only making up the part where he's on the spaceship. I think that without a doubt, all these people on the logging crew definitely saw something weird in the sky, and Travis did run out there. And then they left and came back and Travis was gone. So if he's making it up, it started right then. And then you have to think about, okay, if he did make it up, did he just seize the opportunity? Was he like, oh man, we did see some UFO looking thing in the sky that spooked us. Do I hide out for 5 days and come back with this crazy story? That's one way. But it's just hard to explain where he was. And I think that genuinely his other crew members didn't know where he was. So he had to have been tricking them too. And then you'd have to say, okay, well, where was he? His brother and his mother were genuinely looking for him. So were they in on it too? Where did he hide for 5 days? Like, what happened? Or did something strike him and he went into some coma state and then just came to? Like, that would make more sense than him just saying, cool, they're gone. All right, what's my story? I'm going to live off the land for 5 days and then come back with this crazy story. What? For what? Why?
Yeah, it's not even like media was that big back then. Like, there wasn't like a CNN that he could go on, at that time, right? Like, there wasn't this huge thing where he's like, oh, I'm going to make it big. I'm going to be on all the shows. And I'm gonna be on,
right.
Was he going to be on Johnny Carson? Like, no, what? No.
I would be interested to see, because knowing the internet, this has to exist somewhere, but I'd be interested to see sort of a breakdown of when he started telling the different aspects of his story on a timeline. Like, I'd like to see if his story has evolved over the years, or if he's told the same story the same way for, 50 odd years. Like, I'm really interested if his story is made up in response to people pushing back on him, or if even like his first accounts to the police told the entire story as he tells it today. I think that would bring a lot of credence to his accounts, from myself anyway.
I don't think he's really changed any details throughout the years.
Not really. Nothing major where, you'd be caught in some lie. If anything, I think certain parts have become more descriptive.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So,
which, I mean, he
Makes
could be
sense.
embellishing those parts and, he's just adding to the story where it's like the classic grandpa talking about walking uphill both ways to school in the snow. And there's always a new detail. You're like, bullshit. Or how big was that fish? Was it this big or was it this big? It's like there could be some of that going on. But it doesn't take away the basic elements of the story that he was on some spaceship. That's like, that part's never changed.
yeah, honestly, what I noticed, because after we recorded him, I listened to the tape, and then I went back to the times he said it before for that exact reason. I was like, let me see if he changed his story. Coming from the true crime world, that's what we would do. We would listen to, how did you tell it to Dateline, and then how are you telling it to us? And is there any weirdness with your story right now? Is there something I caught you in that lie? There was nothing. He told... did he talk to Barbara Walters? I don't remember now. But he told somebody in the 90s a couple more details. I'm like, oh, dang, he didn't even say that to us. But like,
There wasn't an outlet like you'd have now to tell that story. Like immediately in 75 in the middle of nowhere, Arizona. But yeah, one of my thoughts was if he made it up, I just think that's such a big commitment. That would be your life now. He had to commit when he was in his early 20s that I'm going to go the rest of my life with this as my identity. And maybe, he did make it up and he regretted doing that in his 30s, but had to stick with it because he didn't want to be, labeled a liar. But man, what a big commitment. And one more thing about this story is that there's not a lot of these stories, right? There's not a lot of cases of people, of a mass sighting of different people who were not that close, of what seems to be a real UFO in the sky, and then someone being missing for a period of time with a very bizarre story at the end. Now, there's other cases where a lot of people saw something, but like there's probably like 5 cases total where it's like this locked up. So it's an anomaly either way. It's interesting because of those elements. If Travis just came out of the woods himself and said this story, I'd have less reason to believe him. It's because of all of his coworkers who were there, who claimed to see the same thing, who were then under suspicion for murder. That to me gives credence to it. So if he was tricking anyone, he was tricking them first.
yeah, and going off of that, I started reading a book. I think it's by Robert Mack. It might be John Mack. I can't remember. But it's a book all about abductions. And once I started believing Travis's story and like, hey, I think he was abducted. Not saying it's aliens, not saying I don't know what it was, but like, maybe it's people that abducted him. Maybe it is some secret government thing that abducted him and did experiments on him.
That's too deep.
I don't think it was that. But then I started looking at all these other abduction cases where it was just a single person doing the same thing in hypnosis with regressive therapy and having very similar things happen and seeing similar beings. And the author of that book, when I started reading it, he kind of goes into like, I'm talking to people who have never talked to each other, never put their story out there. Like it's not public knowledge, and they're saying the same thing. They're having the same kind of encounters. So either this is like a sleep paralysis type thing where it's like, oh, we all see the same thing, or like when people trip on DMT, they all see the machine elves or whatever they are. Mm-hmm. And it's like something just locked deep in our brain that like gets unlocked at this point. But like it is really weird. It'd be a strange coincidence if all these people saw similar beings, and there's like, it's like narrowed down to like a few different types of beings, and then they do kind of the same thing. It's like these weird medical things with like experimentations with tools we've never seen before, but like kind of a focus on reproductive stuff. I don't. It's strange when you add it all up.
Even if he had some hypnosis like episode out there, not hypnosis. If he had some sort of paralysis episode out there,
A fugue state.
a fugue state, right? Then he would have had to stumble far enough out of sight where when they pretty much very quickly came back to look for him and he wasn't there, and then somehow not kill himself in all those days in the woods and then come to with the story that he believes. That just is a very big pill to swallow if you're taking, like, that would be crazier to me. That could be what happened, but that is fucking crazy. Like, seriously.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. You know, you can go down this rabbit hole of like, what are the aliens? What's their purpose here? Are people seeing the same aliens? Or are they seeing different aliens from different galaxies? You know, it's once this idea of like these sci-fi elements or aliens gets into the like public zeitgeist and everybody starts to think about it, everybody starts to build on them. And you could argue that a lot of these like abduction cases, even Travis Walton's, is maybe he saw some sci-fi film, you know, and he saw something like that. He saw some aliens in an old The Day the Earth Stood Still in like 1950s or whatever, and he just formulates a story around it and then just sticks to it. And he tells it once and it's out there, it's in the zeitgeist, and now he has to stick to it forever. And he can embellish it as the years go on, but he knows that it becomes more and more, it becomes harder to disprove his story the longer he tells it. And because he's been telling it for so long, it's hard to disprove. You know, he's made it bulletproof. He's built the walls around it. He's made it perfect. And there's always, in this subject, there's always two sides. You know, like you're always going to have evidence for either. You're going to have evidence that he says this or she says that, but then also somebody on the other side that's always going to be able to disprove whatever they say. And that's the hardest thing about researching this is like, is the evidence you have good? Is it made up by somebody on the internet? Mm-hmm. Is it usable? Can you build on it? And you just never really truly know. I mean, no matter how much information you have, you can never really know if it's the truth.
One of the problems, I think, is people instinctually need some sort of deeper reason behind everything. You know, they start asking the questions like you just posed. Why are they here? What are they doing? What do they want from us? And I think that's such a naive take. I think that it's you're overlooking all the things that are important. If we're talking about some advanced intelligence, then that has to be accounted for when you're thinking about it. It's like if we're in elementary school and there's 20 kids out there playing on the playground and 19 of them are super big for their age and could, you know, beat any of the other kids' asses, and there was one smaller kid who hadn't had his growth spurt yet, they're not going to all just pick on that kid. So, like, I feel like the idea of the fear of them wanting to do something to us, I think is a little bit, I guess, unwarranted. And I also think that it's, how do I say this? Like, I think that we want there to be some special reason because we're so used to being at the top of the food chain. We need there to be some, romantic reason as to why they're here, as if we're going to just join forces and take over the universe together. I think that if you're coming from a place that's so far away we can't see it, or close by and we can't see it, in crafts that we can't mimic what they do, then you already won. It's like, the car has been around for how long? Like, that was like a 1900s thing. Like, it really became a thing. It's like we're way so far behind that it's just almost, it's silly to think that they would want anything from us. What would they want? What would we have to offer? Water? I mean, like, for real. I think that you gotta, and I don't know anything, but it's such a small-minded take to feel like if there's some advanced civilization out there that they owe us anything, or that they would be interested in us to the point where we're going to sit down and have tea and talk about something. They're like, look, we already know all that shit. We know that you guys don't know that shit yet. we're not even going to talk about it because you won't even believe us. And if we showed ourselves to the world, we already know that you guys would probably end up killing yourselves because it would just dismantle a lot of our fundamental beliefs. If they're that advanced, they would know that. They would.
Yeah.
We would know that if it was the other way around, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's what it is. And shit, they may have seen that before. They may have, gone to the plants like, oh yeah, don't touch that. It's like the same thing of like there being some, part of a national park where it's like, don't go in there, don't touch those plants. This is like a sacred, don't mess up their environment in the swamp. It's, same idea. It's like if you do, there'll be a ripple effect and the animals are going to die, right? It's like what's the word for that? Like a
quarantine?
No, like it's like sacred. It's like a what is
reserve?
That? Reserve, yes.
Nature reserve?
A nature reserve, yeah.
Sacred nature reserve.
Sacred nature reserve.
I like that. I want one of those.
It's sacred. No, but I mean, it's a nature reserve. You can't touch anything. You can't get too close to it. They don't want humans fucking it up. I would think that the aliens would probably think the same way. We're not going to go fuck shit up. And it's just super naive to think that they would need anything from us when clearly they've figured out how to go here and back for thousands of years without us knowing for sure they exist. So, I mean, that kind of says it all.
Yeah.
Or we're just insane and we think there's aliens and there's not.
Who knows?
That'd be disappointing, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would suck. I mean, it could be other things, though. It could be another dimension. It could be some kind of paranormal thing. It could be, who knows? It could be us from, I mean, that's a big theory, is that there was a huge apocalyptic disaster. Like, let's say that's what, like, the flood with Noah's Ark was, like, talking about, right? The whole earth flooded at one point. The smartest of society left. They fled because they're like, oh, shit, we're having a problem. But they had, like, advanced technology back then. All got wiped away. All the evidence of it. We got a couple people writing little scriptures about it, but they don't really, it gets translated over time. It's game of telephone. But then they come back. And they're like, oh, shit, they're dumb again.
They're like, damn, these guys haven't grown up at all. They do have a cool new car, though. That Lambo looks pretty sick.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, boing, like here's out on my spaceship. Yeah.
It's possible.
Peace, I mean, Elon. This shit's dope. Your shit sucks.
Well, and then, so, this has been a theory I've been going with for a while. I've talked to Dylan about this, but this started happening in the 40s, right? We started seeing these, and that's probably around when commercial flights became a thing, or that's around when we started bugging around up there, right? So more often, like, maybe they're like, whoa, what are they doing down there? Or whatever, let's say they're in the ocean, like, what's going on up there? How did they get up there? Are they advancing? Let's not touch them, like you said. It's a sacred reserve.
So there's probably an alien or a group of aliens in a UFO at some point in like the 30s or 40s and was like, oh shit, look at that thing. What are they doing up here? They're like, oh, damn it, they figured that part out. Well, got to treat this shit differently from this point forward. And then eventually, we're up there all the time. But yeah, it's like that would have been a place that we would never be because we didn't even know how to go there or know that we could go there eventually.
Yeah, and all the stuff in the past, if you look at it, pretty much every religion, stuff comes from the sky, right? Before we could fly. Way before we could fly. They're like, there's stuff up there in the heavens and above us, angels, whatever. All the gods, Greek gods, whatever, they're all up there, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they saw them more. Maybe maybe they were zipping around up there at one point, and then we just had leftover stories from that. And now that once we started going up there, like, oh, we got to kind of hide out a little bit. We need to get away. Let's not get spotted by them. Let's let them figure out their thing.
Yeah. I don't know. What are our thoughts on the new stuff? The new reports, the modern day Navy pilot sightings, the stuff that the Pentagon's talking about, the genesis of the UFO task force. What are our thoughts on these modern day incidents that are sparking a conversation in 23?
So I think it's interesting because I don't even know if I'd describe them as modern day incidents. I think it's the same stuff we've always been seeing. I think what makes this unique is that for the first time, the government is acknowledging it. They're acknowledging that they're recording these things off, the coasts of America, off the Navy ships. Our fighter pilots are recording these really crazy videos of things that none of them can explain, and I like to think that this stuff has always been happening. This is nothing new, maybe even for thousands of years. It's always been recorded in somebody's history. But I think what's interesting about this and what's unique is that we're finally talking about it. There's a real discussion that's taking place globally. And I think it's really leading to large leaps, large things that are now changing in the world, and big things are happening.
But regardless of what happened and what didn't happen in the last 50 years, what was true and what wasn't true, you could just look at today's incidents in the last 10 years, totally ignore every other story you've heard about an abduction or Roswell, just throw it out. Screw it. Throw it out. And just look at what's happening today and actually have a interesting and sometimes complex conversation about it, because there's a lot of unknowns. I don't know why the government would create a UFO task force if there wasn't something interesting or abnormal about what they were seeing. I don't think that they're all just big sci-fi buffs. I think that would be ridiculous. I think that the actual pilots themselves experienced something strange, and that's what prompted all of this to begin with. And so you can't, you have to, if we're believing Navy pilots, then there's something to explore here. And I'm just curious, what's your take on the modern day stories? The Tic Tac, the balloons over Alaska, all that kind of stuff.
I think they're, in a way, losing some control over what could be leaked and what can't be leaked. I think back in the 60s, they had a little more control over what was classified and what wasn't. Now, certain things are slipping through the cracks. I don't think it's a giant government cover-up per se, mainly because I don't think they understand it. I think they know it. I think they know it's non-human intelligence, or have assumed based on all of the evidence they've collected. But they don't know what it is, or have an explanation for it. And how do you tell, people who look up to you, who are okay, what are the answers? What I mean? That's how people take it. Okay, so there's these things in our atmosphere that we don't know what they are. We don't know who's piloting them. We don't know who's in control of them. We don't know where they came from. That's not you don't want to tell people that. If you're the teacher at a school, you got a bunch of kids and ask you something you don't know. Why is the sky blue? And you're actually, I have no idea. How do you explain that to them? And then how do they look up to you for the rest of the class and go, oh wait, I thought they were supposed to know everything. I thought they were supposed to have all the answers. Not saying government's expected to know all the answers, but if they're presenting these and going, hey, here's some slides of these things we've been studying since the 50s, since the 1947 Roswell crash, and we still have no idea what it is. That's a little concerning. I mean, if they can't figure it out, they can't figure it out. But
plus, if that is the case, which it probably is, you don't want your adversaries to know that you don't know. You're going to want them to think that you do know, and they're thinking the same way. They don't want to show their hand and be like, yeah, we have these really cool looking spaceships from 1947, but that thing has not turned on since then. And, in the event that, Russia or China has one too, and they've been able to turn it on or reverse engineer it, then we just showed our hand, or we showed that we don't know, and now they're going to use the fact that maybe they don't know either, but they're going to pretend like they do. And it's just this war game shit. It's you don't want to show your hand, and that's what you ultimately have to do if there's ever going to be some disclosure of UFO alien truth. You're going to have to say that this stuff exists. We know for sure it's not from Earth. It's more advanced. We've got this to work, and this still isn't working. That's all we know. that's going to be scary to certain people. I think the younger generation will care less about it, but it'll kind of, mess with some people's fundamental beliefs. And you also signal to your adversaries that you don't know. And I don't think any of the powerful countries in the world are willing to do that yet.
Totally, yeah. Nobody wants to show their hand, and ultimately it's going to be a global effort for something like disclosure to really happen, to really come out.
Totally.
And I think we live in a time now where we have all the tools necessary at our disposal to make something like that happen. We have the internet. We have the ability to where anyone can talk to anyone. We can get the data together. We can share it. We can repost it. We can talk about it. We can discuss it. And, you see these communities like Reddit where a lot of like cool stuff comes out, government sanctioned things. There was something that came out that Jeremy Corbell, I sent you guys last night.
Yeah, watch that video.
It was cool. It was like, it's supposedly...
It's pretty weird.
Supposedly, it's a leaked video from Congress from the UAP task force showing one of the UFOs in the ocean captured by, one of our Navy destroyers. But that just goes to show you, it's like, I'm not sure that the government or the military are the people who should be leading disclosure. I really think if it's ever going to come out, because of all those things, because of governments not wanting to lose control or show their hands, I don't think they'll ever give us everything. They'll give us pieces.
Disclosure is of no importance if you're someone in the government. Now, as a citizen, you would say, yes, it is. We should know the truth. But they gain nothing by telling you that they don't know anything.
They lose something.
They lose something, and they could stand to lose a lot, actually. So I understand it. It's just frustrating. But there's no benefit in disclosing anything, especially when you only have little pieces to the puzzle, when you don't have everything. That is scarier. So what are your thoughts on the balloon extravaganza of a few months ago? My take on it was that there was so many parts of it that were blatantly contradictory of itself. If you zoom out and you look at what happened that week, it first started with a balloon in the sky, clearly a balloon. It was white. It was a balloon. Citizens took videos of it. It was flying low enough to be able to actually get like a glimpse of it. And it was immediately determined to be a Chinese balloon. Pretty much immediately. They shot that thing down in American fashion, and they scooped that thing up out of the ocean, and they released pictures of them scooping it out of the ocean. So, okay, pretty straightforward. Then, not too long after, there was reports of other balloons, anomalies in the sky. The descriptions of them were kind of different, though, and in the course of a couple days, they shot down 3 more things in the sky that clearly they felt like they should shoot them down because they were either not supposed to be there or, I don't know. But I look at that and I say, okay, the timing of those 2 things cannot be a coincidence. I don't think there's some conspiracy here. I think that because it was publicly known that there was a balloon in the sky that hung out there for several days before we did anything about it, that if there's more anomalies in the sky, that we're going to, tell our citizens and the rest of the world that we're going to have a fast response to stuff like this. And they did. The problem is the description of the 3rd balloon in the sky is not a balloon. And I don't have it in front of me, but the way they initially described it was kind of like the Tic Tac. It was cylindrical in shape, size of a car or bigger, moving in weird ways. And that means they don't know what it is. Just my theory here, I feel like they seized the opportunity to take that fucker down, to take that thing down and try to study it. It's weird how there are, lots of pictures of the other balloons. There's even like a 20 megapixel photo from the cockpit of one of the jets a pilot took of this balloon clearly being a balloon. It's a great shot. It looks pretty cool.
It's a selfie.
It's a selfie. That's a badass selfie. But there is nothing at all of the third balloon over Alaska. And
of any of the three after. There's no
there's no photos.
and it's
or
classified. You can't even you can't request it. Why would it be classified? If it's the same thing that we all saw publicly from China, why is it classified? Or if it's some citizens experiment that got out of hand, why would that ever be classified? Just come out and say, guys, like, it's really a nothing burger. It's actually this, unless it wasn't.
So my theory on this is that when the first Chinese balloon flew across, it's a surveillance balloon. It flew across the United States, basically. People were reporting it in like Montana and stuff. They're like, oh shit, that's actually not ours. Let's go ahead and wait until it gets over the ocean. It got over the Atlantic. They shot it down. They're like, let's maybe we should adjust our radars a little bit. Dial them in to maybe you filter it out so you don't pick up all these weather balloons that are actually flying around, because there's a lot of stuff up in the air that's just floating around. That's whether it's a hobby thing or a weather balloon gathering info. We're studying all kinds of stuff in the sky. Now, when they adjust it to filter out less and allow the smaller things, they're like, oh crap, what are all these things we're seeing? And then my theory is that they tried to shoot them down, these three other objects, and they were unsuccessful. And they didn't actually shoot anything else down, but they may have supposedly got
there was a guy in Alaska who was taking footage of them. I mean, they went to a place in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I'm talking about middle of nowhere, Alaska, in the Arctic, to recover something. So clearly they went there because something came down. Because it wasn't an easy place to get to.
Now, what if that's a hobby balloon and you just spent a $500,000 Sidewinder missile to shoot it down? That's embarrassing.
If it was a hobby balloon, then the hobbyist would come forward and say, that was my balloon, because it's missing. That hasn't happened.
Well, so somebody tried, I don't remember if it was that one or the one over the Great Lakes.
Pay me back for my balloon.
No, I think this was the one over the Great Lakes, but this is one thing that happened. So somebody said, of course, all the news media ran with it, and they're like, yeah, okay, this explains all of them. They were like, yeah, we did have a weather balloon up around that area that stopped, the transponder stopped talking to us. It may have been ours over the Great Lakes. I'm pretty sure it was the one over the Great Lakes. But they're like, they also go down all the time, so it may not have been ours. So maybe, but you don't come looking for your balloon. If you're setting up 10 of these and you're like, oh, 3 or 4 of them are going to fall out of the sky eventually, you don't really you're not like, where's my balloon? Pay me back for my balloon. You know what I mean? It's it's the casualty.
I mean, my thing is since when do we shoot down balloons? I mean, I guess since a couple months ago, we do that now. Haven't done it since then, though. Going back on the timeline of when those stories were coming out, I believe it was within a 24-hour period that all 3 of those balloons, with quotations here, balloons, were shot down, right?
I think it was a week or 3 or 4 days maybe, but it was every couple days there was another one. Maybe 2 in a row, but I don't.
It was, yeah, can you?
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, look it up. Either way, it was within a couple of days, right? I feel like maybe it was a good time, it was a win-win if the government actually saw something in the sky that looked like it could be some sort of advanced craft, which could come from anywhere. It could have came from China or Russia, right? Or, another planet or dimension, who knows? If they saw something that, gave those characteristics, what a perfect time to seize that opportunity to take it down. So maybe you take that one down and you take down 2 balloons with it. And it's just super gray now what happened. And then the media just kind of stopped talking about it because, well, there's nothing more for us to learn, But I think that there's so much, picture evidence of these obvious balloons. But the most interesting one of them all that was conveniently shot down in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, what a perfect time to do that. It's I'm not saying I'm not trying to speak in conspiracy theory terms. I'm talking about what an efficient time to do that. take down what could be some sort of advanced craft, not saying where it's from, just an advanced craft, take it down over the middle of nowhere, Alaska, where literally no citizen could get to, and do it during the same week that these Chinese balloons are taking over the media, and this response could look good. It's like, hey, we're defending our country. We're not going to have just random things in the sky. We're going to take them down. And it's just like a win-win. And, that theory could be completely debunked if we saw the photos and read the reports of what it really was, and it ended up being some commercial balloon. I don't have that, so I don't know that. So I'm having to speculate. But based on the initial reports of what it looked like, how it was moving in the sky, and the lack of information following that, makes me think that, I think we shot down something weirder than that. And we're definitely not going to tell you what it is, because they still don't know what it is. They're going to have to go back channel and go with some random guy in some department. Like, oh yeah, that guy's familiar with these things, whatever they are. So I don't know. I just find it very strange that all that happened in the same week, and the most interesting one of them all is the most mysterious one of them all, with the least amount of information, the zero pictures, zero reports, zero concrete evidence, and shot down over the most, convenient place in America, the middle of nowhere, Alaska, where not a single soul is going to see what you recover from that Arctic floor.
Yeah. I really don't think it's a coincidence that all of these things happened in the same week. If you put yourself in the perspective of the government or the military, or even like somebody like President Biden, you get this report of, hey, the Chinese are flying a spy craft over America right now. What are you going to do about it? He's got to make a split-second decision. He's got to give the military something to do. And we have this huge military. We don't want to look globally like these people who just let China just spy in our airspace. We're supposed to have the greatest air force in the world. We're supposed to have our skies locked down. So when something like that does happen, whether or not it was an accident by China or it was on purpose, who's to say? But the fact is it happened.
I've said this theory to other people before, like at a bar or something, and someone who is against the idea, their immediate response is, well, if they're so advanced, how could we shoot them down? I'm like, okay, good point. But I'm like, what if what they shot down is just some, basic drone thing that's unmanned, that's just still out there doing a job that it doesn't even do anymore. And it's just like dinking around out there. I think that an F-18 could totally just go, potentially, they could also miss, but it's not impossible to take it down, I don't think. It's like, I'm not saying it's like a bunch of aliens, we're at war with them and they're not able to dodge a missile. I think that it's probably some sort of listen to what Avi Loeb was saying, where he thinks that some of these, UFOs or maybe self-generating drones from so far away, and they're still doing a thing. They could be from some civilization that's long lost, and its mission is over, and it's just out there. It just still works, but it's not really relevant anymore. And that to me would make sense of how you could potentially shoot down some advanced technology. Not saying that's correct. Also, I'm not even saying that the government should come forward necessarily and say what they shot down. I'm just pointing out the fact that I think it's more interesting than they're saying it is. And if anything, I get kind of excited about that, because it looks like at least the government and the military are reacting to these things now.
Admitting to reacting to them,
Admitting to reacting to them.
They probably have been all along, but
sure,
we're finding out about it now.
Yes. And so I think that no matter what it is, it's the whole point of this conversation about UFOs is there's stuff in the sky that we don't know what it is. So that's really all we're trying to figure out here. The idea of there being aliens from another planet, that's a fun one. I like that idea. But that doesn't take away from the search or the mission. That's, I don't want that to necessarily be the answer. I think it's just a possibility. And so if you start, actually trying to crack the code here and solve the mystery of the unknown objects in the sky, then maybe you'll get closer to finding out what some of these other anomalies are that seemingly do stuff that defies our technology.
Do you want to hear the timeline?
I do.
Okay, so Wednesday, February 1st, Chinese spy balloon is spotted above Montana, right? February 4th, 3 days later, shot down by an F-22 off the coast of South Carolina. So 3 days, it covered the whole U.S. February 9th, first UFO is detected off coast of northern Alaska, the one you were talking about. February 10th, that one is shot down by an F-22 over Dead Horse, Alaska. Saturday, February 11th, a day later, second UFO is shot down by an F-22 over Yukon, Canada.
This supports my theory, actually. It was the weird one first. It's like, okay, seize the opportunity. We just shot down a balloon. Shoot that fucking thing down, whatever the hell that is, because we're responding to these things now. And shoot down 2 other commercial balloons that we can easily prove are something that's, completely nothing burger.
The third one, NORAD claims it was a radar anomaly. So is that the national?
And all that happened in what span of time?
It was about a week, right?
Not the first one. Like, I don't care about the first one that we obviously.
9th, 10th, 11th, 12th.
Yeah. 4 days in a row.
February, yeah.
But see, this timeline's really important, right? Because
it is.
This idea of like the Chinese weather balloon being the first, it really shows you like where the mindset of the military was. Once they realized there was something invading our airspace, and now America knows about it, everybody in the world knows about it, they go on high alert. And they say, okay, there's something in our airspace. We need to really double our efforts and look for anything else that's invading our airspace right now. We need to make sure China's not launching another balloon, or they're not using this opportunity to find holes in our defenses. And you can imagine in that scenario, when they're on high alert, they're pointing everything they have, all their radars and everything into our skies. They start to see all these other little things popping up at the exact same time in the same 3-day period. And they go, oh, there's another one. What is that? We don't know what that is. Shoot it down. Let's be safe. Get rid of it.
I want to reiterate that I don't think that the government as a whole is all knowing or something. We're like, okay, like we're just going to collectively, trick our citizens into thinking this. I think it could have been something very casual, like President Biden. There's a report of something else in the sky, and he's like, shoot it down. And they're like, well, sir, it's actually, it's kind of got characteristics of XYZ. Like something that's kind of, that insinuates that it's advanced craft of some sort. Okay, shoot it down anyways, and then shoot down 2 more things while you're at it. Because it's like, that happened when? That was February? Okay. And it is mid-May. So have there been no more balloons in the sky since then?
No chance.
So why was it important that week and that week only? I think because there was a balloon that showed itself to the public that was clearly a Chinese balloon, and the U.S. government made that known pretty much immediately. It was shot down, and then other things were shot down right after that I think were taking advantage of the timing. And they also could have went to go, like, I'm not even saying that, like, because the president has to give the order to do that, right?
Which somebody recently, or not recently, during when all this was happening, somebody went on TV and was like a Navy pilot and said, like, it's very strange for the president to make the call on shooting something down. It's like, that doesn't happen.
That's like war shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my point is, though, I'm not even saying that the president knew what he was shooting down. I think that they probably didn't know exactly, but it was similar enough to these other reports. Why is it like almost a carbon copy description of the Tic Tac? It is. Pull up the initial description of that thing.
The one over Alaska?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know
type in the word car, because that's a...
Yeah, it was like ATV or something, like some weird...
He specifically said it was not a balloon. And then they took that out of the report.
They retroactively deleted that part
from the minutes of him talking. And when they
What
archived
could easily
it,
just be like oops, that was not really, that was an accident. Like, it's not some big conspiracy. It's just a little thing you can do real quick.
Yeah.
That kind of just, little smoke and mirrors, just enough to buy some time to figure out this shit. Like, that's what you're doing, right? Like, that's what I would do if I was in charge of making sure they didn't know. I'm like, okay, like a little smoke and mirrors here. Make sure that line's not in the report. And some intern's like, are you sure? Yes. Or you're fired.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's weird how reminiscent it is to Roswell. It's like our present day Roswell for a new age. It's super simple, but it's crazy to think like a little word change like that could have huge ramifications, like changing a flying disc to a weather balloon in 1947. And it expands.
The reason why I still think about it is because if it was just nothing, it's in their best interest to prove that it was nothing. It would be, show us that it was a balloon.
Show us the evidence. They
took
pictures.
Then I'll shut up and be like, yeah, I was a little out there on that one. I was speculating a little too hard, but like they would have that information, so they would share it. And unless it was something that would be concerning, confusing, or alarming, or puzzling, then they would share it.
Yeah. And that's something, this idea of like making things top secret because of national security implications is something that Brian Binder talks a lot about. He talks about it all the time, that I think Leslie King did as well, that the government's MO is always to classify.
Yep.
And I mean, ultimately, that's the reason why we haven't seen any pictures or any video of these things. They definitely have it, and they have it in HD quality, But they're always going to say, even if it was a weather balloon, if it was absolutely nothing, if it was a commercial, private-funded weather balloon, we'll probably still never see it because they don't want us to know, because they would rather have it classified and not have to worry about the implications or the ramifications down the road of giving away anything. And it isn't even always about the craft itself. If it were a weather balloon, they may not want you to know that they've got a satellite that could zoom in 10,000 times and see something super clearly on the ground, and that may be what they took a picture with. And they don't want our enemies to know that we have that up there, So you just never know what the national security implication is, but that's a lot of reasons why we have so little evidence.
But wouldn't
from the
it be
government.
okay to say, hey, we shot something down of our own and everything's fine, but like it's classified? Is that giving away too much to the adversaries?
No, but I think saying that, people naturally would say, prove it. Like, show us how you know that. And then if they say we can't do that, then you're kind of just back at square one and you've done nothing really. So why even give that information away? Why not just say it's classified and move on?
It bothersome to me because it was a very short period of time, in less than a week, that they treated one incident this way and another one differently. They treated one where they blatantly said what it was, showed off with high quality pictures what it was and video, and that they had shot it down and scooped it up, and then 24 hours later it's something similar, and silence.
Totally.
So yeah, they said it was cylindrical and silver-ish gray, about the size of a small car.
So why would, like, you could even argue that could be a balloon. Well, why would a balloon way out there be of interest? Unless it wasn't.
And if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, so fact check me on this, but this thing was moving pretty quick, right? Like, wasn't the jet struggling to keep up with it, or they were like matching speed, which would have been like 400 miles an hour?
Is there a description of how it moved?
Or did they say that it was stationary? I could be wrong.
They didn't say it was stationary. I don't think.
Well, they do say it seemed to be floating without any sign of propulsion and was at the whim of the wind, but
that could be a balloon.
They said did not have enough information to determine if it was balloon-like. They said it wasn't manned. Let's see. It interfered with the pilot's plane's sensors.
That's the weird part. That's the weirdest part, in my opinion.
Interfered? Mm-hmm. So not picked up on the radars,
and then also,
but interfered with.
Pilots couldn't figure out how it was staying in the air, which seems to rule out balloon.
So no propulsion, not a balloon.
Silver, metallic,
puzzling
cylindrical.
our pilots who are flying the most advanced craft that we know about in the world. That's interesting. And it's even more interesting that they closed the book on it immediately after, when days before they were an open book about allegedly the same thing. Just saying.
Yeah, it's bizarre. You know, I really think that it was a situation where they got in over their head. They, they saw this balloon. They knew they needed to shoot it.
They won.
Oh, absolutely. Like, they knew they needed to shoot down the balloon, and they did. But because so many people's eyes are now in the sky watching, everybody at that time, if you remember, everybody's got their phones out. Everybody's looking in the sky, hoping another balloon's going to fly over their state and they can get a video of it. Knowing so many people are watching the sky, they've got to double their efforts to make sure nothing else is going to fly through the sky. Nothing's going to fall on a town, kill somebody. So they're just on high alert. They see these other things. The other thing that I remember from the article that was interesting is the reason they decided they needed to shoot these down was because there was it was flying at an elevation that was dangerous to commercial aircraft, which means it was flying around.
So were the Tic Tacs.
Yeah, exactly. All these things seem to fly around like 40,000 feet. So when you say that and you say, okay, we don't know what this is, it's not coming up in like the FAA's database of approved things that should be in the skies. It's on our radars because we've tuned them differently to like check for these things now. What do we do with it? We gotta err on the side of caution and get it out of the sky, because if it interferes with a plane and kills 400 people, that's going to be a much bigger deal than if we just can shoot something down with one missile somewhere in Alaska, right? Whether or not it's an alien or not, from that perspective, being in the military, you have a responsibility to the citizens to get rid of it, to get it out of there. And it's very likely that if it were a UFO, even if it weren't, if they suspected that it were, they'd want to shoot it down and collect it. You know, if there's something they could learn from it, if they could develop our Air Force better, give us better technology, you're going to want to do that every time.
I think that's what happened, actually.
I think so, too. I subscribe to that.
Yeah.
They also said it wasn't an aircraft per se.
Per se. It's more like a disc. I'm just kidding.
Like a hovercraft.
I mean, it is uncanny how similar the description is to the Tic Tac, though. And it's like, I'd totally eat it if I was wrong and it was just some balloon. And I would just say, well, you know, there were things that you said that made me think otherwise. You know, maybe be a little more clear on your description to the public of what it is. But I don't think it's that deep. I think it's probably is what it is. And on the surface, I don't have to go very far to think, it's a little weird. I think that they shot down something that was, you know, a little more interesting than the other things. And they don't want to tell us about it because they don't fully know either.
Yeah. To like build on this and also tie it back into another episode, when we talked to Ryan Graves, he mentioned being out on, I think it was the Atlantic Ocean, somewhere like 60 miles out. And for years, he would see these things off the coast of America. And there have been reports from the Navy from both coasts that these things that, I mean, exactly match that description just float out in armadas. I mean, in like several, like, I don't know how many. I think they said they had like 6 on the Tic Tac video. Like, these things just seem to float out 100 miles off our coast. And if they're out there and they've been there since, if I remember right, he said since like 2014 is when he first started seeing them. It's likely these things are all over the world, you know, maybe in hidden places or places where there's not heavy population. But the odds that we shoot down 2 in a week, maybe it's not crazy that they're there. Maybe they're all over the place. And we just happened to see those 2 because we were looking.
Yes, exactly.
So
I think you're right about that.
The thing that makes me just most like this wasn't a balloon is that they were scrambled in the most expensive jets, right? They did visuals, got images, right? Definitely took photos of it, shot it down. Maybe they didn't. They say they recovered pieces of it. But when John Greenwald requested any images or photos or videos from these events, they're all classified.
Mm-hmm.
So why? Why? Like, is it some secret Russian or Chinese thing that we can't see? Why can't we see? We can't even see the debris of it. Like that, it's very, very fishy that they're not just like, hey guys, it was just a balloon. Here's some pictures of it.
Because a few days ago, you guys basically told us that you will show us. Hey, look, this is that balloon, and we got it for you, America.
And it was the Chinese, and we showed them.
And it's like, okay, then just a few days later, the complete opposite. That tells me that it's something different. something more important in some sort of way.
And what if it was? What if it was theirs? Right? It was some secret,
some blunder like
government. Yeah,
that was Joe's weather balloon. It's always a weather balloon.
No, I meant like, let's say it was Skunk Works or something.
If there's so many damn weather balloons up there, why can't the meteorologists get the rain right? I mean, I feel like at this point, it's just maybe weather balloons just didn't really work that well or something. It was a primitive idea. Some meteorologist is gonna tweet at me and be like, actually, and that's fine. Like, I actually don't know. Please tweet at me. But I'm like, weather balloon. That seems like an archaic thing at this point. I'm sure we still use them, but like, they're not getting the weather from that, are they? I don't think so.
I think after 100 years, people would just stop losing their weather balloons.
There's too many damn weather balloons to not have more accurate weather.
It's true.
Seriously.
Well, it's aliens and they're here.
So, before we wrap up this roundtable, I want to figure out a way to keep this podcast going, keep High Strange going, keep talking about this stuff, right? And obviously, I want to do a second season of some sort. I want to be able to dive into more cases, interview more people, even expand it beyond America. I've had a lot of questions from people saying, well, I was compelled by the podcast, but it seems like it might just be an American thing. And I totally get that. It does on the surface kind of seem that way. But just from our basic research, it's happening all over the place. And there's other stories that are in some ways even more compelling than what we told in this series that have happened all over the globe. And so, one, I want to do a second season the way, like season one, where it's a deep dive into this concept, this idea, and talk to the people who've witnessed things and really, challenge their stories, put together the evidence and lay it out there for the listener to decide for themselves, and just expand on it a little deeper. Now that we've had our introduction to the topic, let's dive even deeper now that we're not thinking about just the basics of whether or not this is interesting to you. But at the same time, it took us, at least a year and a half to make High Strange. Logistically, it was hard, traveling all over the country to talk to these people. But the cool part about it now is that I've had so many people email us and, reach out to us with their stories, and all the people that I've met along the way, other journalists, have kind of plugged us into the pipeline a little bit, which has been really cool. And we'll have a lot better, more efficient access to do a season 2. All that to say, what do we do in the interim? I feel like we should keep talking about this stuff, like us. And we should decide right now to commit to a season 2 and just dive headfirst in again. And in the meantime, we should talk about the subject like a traditional podcast. And I kind of want to get just a temperature from the listeners, those out there hearing this, like, would that be of interest to you? Would you listen to that? If you would, then I think that we could keep going and also have on tons of guests. I mean, we have so many people we've met, and there's probably unanswered questions even from us on certain guests that were on season 1 that we could dive a little deeper into and just keep the conversation going and evolving and not get stale. So I want to know from the listeners, those out there hearing this, would you want us to keep going and talk about this in this way while we put together a buttoned up season 2? Would you do that? If the answer is no, it's all good. But I feel like selfishly, I want to do it because now this topic, I can't get it out of my head. And I feel like we could offer a different sort of approach to this, just like the podcast was before. But why just shut it down and wait? Why not keep talking about it? We might be able to find more interesting stuff to put in season 2. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dylan?
Yeah, no, I mean, the podcast itself it's such a unique look into this subject. It comes from a really unique place, which is very fact-based, very evidence-based, talking to people who are very reputable people, and a lot of people in this space, nothing against them because it is fun to talk about, but a lot of people just love to talk about like the outer limits, the wild side of this, the crazy things you could never prove or disprove. Mm-hmm. And that's fun to talk about, but I think what's really going to push this conversation forward is stuff like this, like High Strange as a podcast, and even like this, like Roundtable. It's like, this is unique even on top of that, in that it's much longer form. We've been going for an hour and a half, just shooting the shit, talking about whatever.
No wonder I have to pee.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Jeez. But, shotgun, the first upstairs bathroom. I'm serious. I might not make it if I don't. I've had like 4 bottled waters in the past 3 hours.
Yeah, that's why I keep an empty bottle.
I'm too hydrated. I'm overhydrated.
Yeah, but it's a cool platform, so I hope we get to keep doing it and get to expand on it because it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you're game as a listener to keep hearing us ramble and also have some cool interviews and unpack some details for real, then I would love to know your thoughts on that, and we'll promise you a badass second season, and we'll update you right here along the way.
Do we have like a tip line or something people can email?
Ooh,
they should know about.
Don't.
I've got Payne's phone number.
Just give him the phone number.
Yeah, it's 3. What? I'm just kidding. Someone's gonna be like, cool. So if it starts with a 3, and he almost said 1, but what are the? Could you do that? Could you figure out? There'd be a lot of combinations. Good luck. If you call me and that's how you found it, then I'll talk to you for real.
Well, I'll post it too. So
smart, yeah.
I'll put it in the.
We can just add that. We should make a number. I think that I would love to talk to listeners about this. I also want more opinions in the room, more takes. I think that, we made this podcast not really having a fully formulated take on this. And it's a ever evolving thing in my head. And I want to talk to tons of different people, all walks of life, and just kind of get their 2 cents. What are your thoughts on this? How does this make you feel? What kind of theory do you have? Let's just spark the discussion, and maybe we'll get somewhere through that. No one's right or wrong here. It's an unsolved mystery. It's still unsolved, but it's going to stay that way unless we talk about it. Even if we learn tomorrow that it's all fake, which I think would be impossible at this point, I think that we would have probably helped push it to that answer still. So regardless of what it is, I think until we know for certain, a healthy conversation wouldn't hurt. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you should also send in all of your hate mail. If the answer is no,
I'm gonna get 100 emails of people saying, "Hell no, dude! I don't want to hear you talk. Go make that show." And you guys are gonna be like, "So what did they say?" I'm like, "Dude, they really dig it. They love this idea." And I'm like, "Oh my god, I gotta tell them."
Well, the thing is, if they listened this far into this episode and sent a
then you're
hate
lying.
email, you're lying. You listened to it and you liked it. So you're getting more either way.
Of course, and here's the thing. I would probably get annoyed of hearing myself, to be honest. But I feel like it could be interesting to get a little insight on, even us just making this damn thing. It's and we'll give you some nuggets. We'll spoil some stuff for you. Not too much, but enough for you to stay interested. But I'm like, it'd be kind of cool if we just decided, we didn't know what was going to happen with High Strange. We didn't know if people would like it, if it if it was too kooky, if it was not interesting enough. But I think now that it's the last episode is out, where do we go from here? I want to make a second season even better than the first. But how do we keep this thing alive, between now and then. Maybe we just meet every week or once a month, or I don't know what it is, and just kind of shoot the shit about this kind of stuff and further unpack the details of season 1, and also bring back all these guests and invite the listeners to ask questions and just make it an open conversation that I think could be a lot of fun. And we might learn something. Maybe not, but it does sound fun. Mike, you haven't said very much. Mike's just like
typing over there.
I'm just thinking of
Mike's just trying to think of a good joke. He's
no.
He's like, what's funny that I could say?
I think we do it. I think it's going to be an endless topic I'm fully consumed in it. Since before we, started researching it for High Strange, I was kind of really into UFOs, aliens, high strangeness. I really like Bigfoot. All kinds of things.
You
Cryptids.
like him?
I like him. I've met him.
Okay.
He's a nice guy.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm fascinated with all of the unexplained, even with people who go missing without a trace. That's fascinating to me. Any mystery in the world, I'm just like you, where I love the Twilight Zone. I love the unexplained, the mysterious, the out there stuff. I'm very into it, so I can talk about this stuff all day, every day. And I enjoy to talk about it. So yeah, I won't send you hate mail saying don't do it. I'll try not to.
Okay. You're going to do it, yeah. I'm like, this, bro, I know this is a fake email address. It still has it. I can see it. I saw it on your phone. This is you, not mike@gmail.com. Yeah, okay. So yeah, please email us. Tell us your thoughts. Send us an email at tips@highstrange.com. I'm going to go make a phone number for this, and I'll add it after this roundtable. But yeah, tell us what you think, and we're pretty energized about doing a second season. I think that it'd be super fun, and there's so much more to explore. If you guys are down for that, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And would you entertain hearing us shoot the shit for a little bit in between then? If we gave you some cool stuff, right? Secret information.
Would you believe us if we told you our podcast was haunted?
We are Corinne and Sabrina, the hosts of Two Girls, One Ghost podcast, the most haunted podcast in America.
We didn't want to believe it at first, but 5 years later and hundreds of encounters submitted by listeners, we can no longer ignore it. We're talking EVPs in episodes, spirits making contact with listeners, orbs darting through our YouTube videos, and so much more.
As paranormal enthusiasts with a possibly unhealthy predilection towards the creepy, we explore the deepest, darkest, spookiest places in the world, delivering doses of research, history, and spine-tingling tales.
If possessed kids crawling backwards up walls, campers entranced in fey orgies, and creatures chasing drivers down back roads is your thing, then tune in to Two Girls, One Ghost wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes are released every Thursday and Sunday.
And now you can join us live on tour for an exclusive investigation of the infamous Conjuring House. It's going to be a wild, spooky ride, and we've saved you a seat. Get your tickets today.